Alright, since most of us in this class, I've heard you guys talk about video games and war, I don't know what it's called, because I'm not a, it's a video game guy. And then we got a couple of athletes over there with Josh, and then the other guy Jose, and then I heard that he used to play sports in high school. You guys are all kind of competitive, right? So as guys, we like to be the best at whatever we do. That's why today I would like to describe to you the process of how a mixed martial artist prepares for a championship bout. Martial arts is a combat contact sport that uses stand-up and ground game techniques to beat the other guy up. In other words, mixed martial artist is a fighter who uses a number of different skills that he has learned from other sports like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, or boxing. Ever since I joined wrestling my freshman year, I've been hooked on martial arts. So I've watched UFC, Pride, big competitions like that, and I actually had personal experience when I wrestled in high school for 3 years. When the presentation is over, I'd like for you guys to have a better understanding of what it takes to be a mixed martial artist and prepare for a big title fight. First, I'll introduce how a fighter prepares mentally. Preparing for a championship bout is kind of like preparing for an exam. You need a lot of focus and concentration. A fighter needs to have one thing in mind, and that's to give himself the best chance for him to win. One thing that can help is by surrounding himself with good peers and good training partners. For example, having a good peer might be having a mentor. One of his mentors could be his coach that's going to be with them throughout the whole process of the fight. A lot of the times fighters usually tend to leave somewhere else to train. Those reasons are because usually the city has a lot of distractions, a lot of nightlife that the fighter doesn't really need. They usually go out to like the mountains where it's more quieter. On the online article posted by MMA.com, a professional mixed martial artist, Fedor, says, "Firstly, when I train in the mountains and the remote areas, I train at high altitude." He goes on to say something else that doesn't relate to this, but then he goes on and says, "Another reason why I do it is because nobody bothers me. All I do up there is train, eat, and sleep. And all I need to concentrate is on the entire process of my training regimen without any distractions. I believe that's what allows me to be in maximum shape leading up to the fight." When a fighter trains in places where there's little to no distraction, he enhances his chance of winning and feeling better for the upcoming fight. Now that you have an idea of how a fighter can prepare mentally leading up to the championship fight, you might also want to know how hard they train. An MMA fighter has to have a series of workouts, conditioning, and film to train for the championship fight. What I mean by a series of workouts is that they need to practice multiple sports like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and then in order for him to know what he's going to do in certain times of the fight. He also needs to study the film of opponents so he could know their strong and weak points are. For example, if his opponent is a strong boxer but has a weak ground game, then our fighter might want to use his wrestling techniques to take him down to the ground and beat him up on there. When training for a championship bout, a fighter needs to be well conditioned. The reasons for that is because championship bouts are usually longer, usually twice as long as a regular fight. So he needs to have endurance throughout the whole fight. For example, in an article on the UFC website, it said the Ontario native has scored all 8 of his pro wins by submission, but in his July loss to Brian Caraway at UFC 149, he showed some impressive power during his ground and pound assault on his opponent. Gannon's downfall in the fight of the night bout was his cardio, as Caraway rallied and submitted him in the final round. What they mean by that is that he came out strong, he was beating the other guy up, and then in the last round, he lost because of his cardio. He wasn't prepared, he wasn't conditioned, so that kind of, that's the reason why he lost the fight. It was not because the opponent was better than him, it was just because he was not conditioned enough. The longer the fight is, the tougher it is for the opponent. The fighters have come out strong in the beginning and then lost at the end due to the poor conditioning. Up to this point, you guys should know what a fighter does to focus and proper training they need to do. Lastly, you guys will find out the discipline the fighters have when it comes to their food consumptions to keep them in the best shape. Nutrition plans are essential to the fighters because that's the way they might want to feel or look when they step into the ring, octagon, or whatever it might be.
What's your fight?
Yeah, hit it again. Sometimes it just. There you go.
So that's the guy in the middle is a.
Down in the tray, I think, is what you want on that one right there.
Oh, so the guy in the middle is considered to be probably the best mixed martial arts of all time, and all the sports are. That's the wrestling. That's kickboxing. That's Manny Pacquiao, probably the best boxer in the world. And then we got the Gracies fighting on the bottom. They're the ones who started jiu-jitsu. And then there's me. That's when that's my sophomore year in high school, and that's my junior year. In my sophomore year, I was about 134 pounds, and I didn't really have a nutrition plan. I ate whatever I wanted to, and then in the second picture, that was at 139 pounds, but that's only a 4 pound weight difference. You can see like the difference right there. I was eating salads, and I cut down on the carbs, but like 4 pounds to look like that isn't a big deal. I could cut that like within an hour or so. So that just shows how nutrition plans affect the way you look and feel. Lots of athletes think they could eat whatever they like, and a couple days prior to the fight, they can just drop weight dramatically and make their weight. Almost all of them can, but it's not really healthy for them because severe problems leading up to death could occur. The vast majority will dehydrate and drain out their bodies. Weight cuts like these can endanger the chances of winning. An article posted by the Sports Illustrated talked about proper nutrition specifically for MMA fighter. Dolce, they go by last name, so they just name up their last names. Dolce, a top nutrition for athletes, says such rapid reduction in mass could raise concerns with anyone familiar with the well-publicized medical dangers of cutting weight. Athletes in weight-restricted sports like boxing, wrestling, and MMA have subjected themselves to severe dehydration, caloric restrictions, vomiting, and rubber exercise suits. Consequences have ranged from impaired muscle recovery, cardiac complications, and even death. So that means that they could cut the weight, but when they step in the ring or octagon or whatever, their bodies are not prepared. They could cramp up because they're not well hydrated, and yeah, that could lose them. They won't be able to do much. Okay, by this time today, I have talked about the way an MMA fighter mentally prepares, trains, and eats. With that said, now you know that the process for preparing for a MMA championship fight is extremely difficult. I suggest we stick to those self-defense classes and pepper spray.